and welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. We are back in the store today because we have a very exciting event this evening with the wonderful Seanan McGuire, aka Mira Grant, aka what other?
A. Deborah Baker.
Yes, of course. So many names. But we're here to talk about Overgrowth, your brand new horror novel, which was exquisite. I had such a good time with it.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to kind of pick your brains about where it all kind of came from. So yeah, what was the kind of initial ideas and stuff for Overgrowth?
Being completely honest, Overgrowth is autobiographical to a large degree. When I was 3, I got lost in the woods behind my grandparents' house in upstate Washington.
Oh,
they didn't find me for 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, horror novel right there. My
Yes.
poor mother, she turned around and I was just gone. They didn't find me for 3 days, at which point I came out of the woods wearing the same clothes I had disappeared in, with no signs that anyone else had been there. Went up to my mother, who was, hysterical, and as she's still trying to process, is this actually my child, told her, and I don't remember this is all family lore, but informed her that the aliens had come and taken her real baby, but it was okay because I was here now.
Wow.
And I spent my entire childhood telling anyone who I met and anyone who would listen that I was the vanguard of an invading species of alien plant people who were on their way to destroy and subjugate their tiny world.
Wow. Okay.
In those words, it was a consistent thing. Now, this has been going on long enough that I honestly could not tell you at this point if I got lost, was abducted, or the aliens took me. I don't know. I was 3. The memories didn't encode.
Yeah.
But when I announced that we were writing this, my mom's first response was, "Oh, you finally decided to out yourself," because she has been hearing this my whole life.
Yes.
And even she accepts that the aliens took her real baby, so.
God. I didn't know. It was like so close to home.
Yeah, it
but
really was.
Yeah.
It started out very autobiographical.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Armada has not yet arrived to eat the earth.
Yes, we're still waiting.
We're still waiting. Come on, guys, speed it up. But basically, everything up to the point that the signal from space starts playing is very autobiographical.
Because those first few pages really hook you in.
Oh yeah.
It's really like, oh, okay, we're here now.
There's a special edition that I believe Daphne Press also did that has a gilded skeleton on the cover. And if you open the dust jacket, you can see the conversion flowers on the inside of the dust jacket.
Oh.
And the first time they sent me those pictures, I straight up had to get up and leave the house. I had a panic attack because I hadn't seen those things since I was 3. So that was a little upsetting.
Oh, a very visceral reaction to it.
You're not supposed to react the way to your own books, but
no. So tell us about kind of the main character then. Is it kind of, are there kind of elements of Anastasia that are you? Like, is it?
I don't think it is possible to write a central character that doesn't have some elements of you.
Okay.
She is not based on me, but like Stacia, I worked in tech support for quite a while before I started doing full-time authoring.
Okay.
And I really liked it because with tech support, everyone's on a phone.
Yeah.
And they call and they say, "I have a problem." And you say, "Great, can I fix your problem?" At that point, it's either yes or no.
Yeah.
No, my problem is that my house is full of hamsters. Well, I can't fix that. Call the hamster removal service. Or, yes, my problem is that my modem doesn't work. Okay, that's what I'm trained to do. You fix their problem, they say thank you, and then they go away. Or you don't fix their problem, they call you a lot of racial slurs that may or may not apply because they only know you as a voice on the phone. You hang up on them, and they've gone away. It was the perfect job for someone that is not always great at people.
Yes.
People are tiring and weird. Like, I would rather answer a phone. So Stacia's job came a bit from me. Her cat is named Seymour, and Seymour is fine.
Yes.
Seymour is fine. I am sometimes very accommodating. You've dealt with me enough to know that I will do my best to not be a problem. And sometimes being very accommodating translates over into the editing stage. So when I'm being edited, I tend to go along with whatever I'm told doesn't serve the story or needs to be removed. And in the case of Overgrowth, it's where's the cat?
Yeah.
At some point the cat got edited out and I let it happen. I take that blame myself, but the cat is fine.
Okay.
He is okay. But I've always had cats. Stacia's roommates were based on people that I know.
Yes. Okay.
Stacia's relationship with her mother is based on my relationship with my mother. You know, so there are elements there,
Yes.
but I have not yet had the signal. So.
No, still waiting.
Still waiting.
Still waiting. And she's very much, it's weird when reading this, there are times you forget that she is of this other species, because she is very much, she is working, she is kind of on the grind, like that old, like, you know, 9 to 5, she has housemates, etc. Like, was that something you were conscious of doing, to kind of almost make her like every woman, that everyone can put themselves?
Yes, I was trying very hard. So Overgrowth is absolutely modeled in a lot of ways structurally off the works of John Wyndham,
Okay.
who wrote Village of the Damned, The Chrysalids, Night of the Triffids, all of those. And he was the master of the cozy apocalypse. Where you're following one person very closely through the end of the world and through everything going badly. And you can't do that if you don't like the person that you're following.
Yes.
Which meant she had to be relatable to as many people as possible. And so those were conscious choices.
Yeah. And she's also, which is kind of great to read from kind of early on, she's also very open about kind of her mental health and therapy and stuff, which again is kind of something that is reinforced and kind of, you know, makes you feel positive about your own mental health journey. Was that again kind of something important for you too?
Like a lot of us, I spent the lockdown years working on my mental health, because what else are you going to do with all that time? And I've gotten a little less open about admitting this, but I've also learned that I can't scrub the internet in our era of Donald Trump running America and the threats of putting all autistic people into camps, which I'm really enjoying. But in 2020, I decided to seek an autism assessment because it seemed like a sensible thing to do. So I went to see a therapist who specialized in adult autism assessments, and she listened to me talk for 5 minutes and went, "How the hell have you not been diagnosed before this point?" Because apparently I am a very classic manifestation of high masking adult female autism, which is also a thing with Stacia. I have started making more of an effort to not force my characters to mask, because I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
If you go for a car ride with me, it's like sharing a seat with a squeaky toy. Every time you hit a bump, I make a pterodactyl noise. It's terrible, but it's also great because I don't feel as stressed when being in a car anymore. And so if you spend that much time talking about your own mental health, your characters are going to talk about it some too, because you now understand how much it impacts and affects everything around you. And one of the things with Stacia, I mentioned that when I was younger especially, I really did introduce myself with, "Hi, I'm the Vanguard." I lost friendships over that. Sometimes because the people didn't want to be friends with me, and sometimes because their parents didn't want them to be friends with me. One of my best friends in elementary school, her mom decided I was satanic because I claimed to be a space alien.
Yeah.
And I know it's a bit of a jump, but American Christians can get weird sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I knew how that would have impacted her, both in terms of socially and social development, but emotionally. How does it feel when you're not trying to lie to people? You're following a compulsion that may or may not be true, but is still a part of who you are. And they reject you so heartily, even when it wasn't hurting them.
Yeah. I suppose the whole thing about kind of reading people as well, which is again such an interesting kind of topic in here, because she has been truthful from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, she hasn't kind of been covering up, and you think it's interesting because obviously we've read and seen kind of the alien invasion thing where they're kind of hidden amongst us and no one has any idea. But no, she's been very
she's been telling everyone
vocal
this whole time and has never lied to anybody.
Yeah.
And that was also very important because I did want to show the reaction.
Yes. Yeah.
Where people start going, "Well, you lied to me." No, I didn't. I never lied to you. And I have had people look at Overgrowth and say that it is very clearly a metaphor for autistic existence, which is why I can't not talk about it a bit, because it is. Every person I know, especially who is diagnosed as an adult, but every autistic adult I know has encountered the "I can't be your friend anymore. I can't be in a relationship with you. Whatever. You're autistic. You lied to me." You couldn't consent to having a romantic moment with me. You can't consent to having mac and cheese for dinner. I'm an adult, I have to pay taxes, I can consent to anything I want.
Yeah.
But we get that reaction of, you have committed a falsehood by being something internally that I could not see externally. And that's also very much the queer experience. You know, it is the trans experience. There are not a lot of places where all those things overlap, but we are in the Venn diagram of right here. We were talking about Chuck Tingle before we started this interview, and he is another very openly autistic author who, because of what he does when he is not an author, which we don't know exactly what that is, but he has alluded it to it being something that would get him in trouble if his face was seen. Has to conceal his identity completely to feel like he can be his true and authentic self when he is talking to readers, and that has created a much safer space for him. And I do think it's important that you try to set things up where you can be authentic, because people can tell.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think it's so interesting. I think this is something that we find with the horror genre in particular, but also I would say sci-fi and fantasy, is that they are genres that kind of deal with these issues, deal with today in such a way that they're not hiding things away. It makes you kind of question what you think and how you react to things. Looking at some of the ideas in Overgrowth, like the ideas of found family, even the kind of overall idea of kind of humanity, is that something that draws you to kind of writing these particular genres, do you think?
A bit, yeah. I love science fiction and fantasy. I have since I was a kid, and I grew up very much in organized fandom, which is the people who put on conventions like Worldcon, which was in Glasgow last year. It's going to be in Seattle this year, where I live. Or the comic conventions, that's all a part of fandom. Well, I was a functionally feral teenager. Like, I had no parental controls. I just went where I wanted, did what I wanted. And it was fanish adults. It was the people who organized these conventions and, you know, held things like book fairs and such, who took me in and tamed me enough that I could survive. But they also did things like pay for me to take my SATs, which are a test that American students have to take to go to college. Or one of them paid for a new pair of glasses for me when mine got broken, because I was feral in part because my family had no money at all. I would not have survived to reach my 20s if not for fandom looking at me and going, that's free real estate, and just taking me in. So found family is such an innate part of my identity and my community. I don't think I've ever written a book that didn't include found family in some way.
Yes, yeah, that's quite interesting. I know my first book that I read was the Feed, was obviously the Newsflash trilogy. And there's something about that group that they're kind of perhaps some of the last people alive, that they're kind of traveling the world, and there's that kind of, obviously there's the brother and sister, but there's such a camaraderie between those people.
They are very much a family.
Yeah. It does feel like a very important kind of statement that even at the end of the world, hopefully there's someone by your side for it. So. Yeah, definitely. So for, obviously we kind of touched on fandom just then. There's a few kind of nods in here to things like obviously Little Shop of Horrors, for example. What was kind of your first fandoms that you were into, and do you still kind of follow them?
So my first fandoms, provably and documented, were Doctor Who, which is actually how I learned to read, and My Little Pony. Generation 1 My Little Pony. I have the third largest Generation 1 My Little Pony collection in North America. There is a woman here in England who has the second largest in the world, and her house is not well secured, so I'm considering going to visit. I'm kidding, I'm not actually going to rob a British woman. But I've tempted at times, and just like, those would be happier with me. Come on. And Doctor Who was on. Doctor Who actually messed me up. It was great. So in America, it played on a channel called PBS, Public Broadcasting. And I had a television in my room. It was not a very large television. It was one of the first generation of kids that had our own TV. Little TV. And my mom got tired of me asking her questions about what I was watching. So she turned it to PBS and then snapped off the knob. So the only way you could change the channel was if you had a pair of pliers and adult strength. My TV was pretty much permanently set to PBS. And what she told me was that anything that aired before noon would tell me real things in a made-up way. So, like, I couldn't go visit the Muppets.
Yes.
I couldn't go to the electric company, but the facts they gave me were correct. And anything that aired after noon was for real and for true, and I did not have to ask an adult about it. Doctor Who was on at 7 p.m. on weeknights, so until I was 10, I thought Doctor Who was a documentary. I got in real trouble in school. And then my mom came home one day and found me in the living room with all the lights off, curled up in a chair, sobbing, like I was going to die, sobbing. And she, of course, thinks something bad has happened. What's wrong? What's wrong? Is everything okay? Did something happen at school? Adric just died. And she didn't know who that was, but she knew I was really upset about it. And it took a while for her to figure out that what I was saying was that a character on Doctor Who had passed away. And I clearly thought that a person that I knew had passed away. And that was fun. And after that day, I found out about fiction. So
you must have thought that Britain was quite messed up. As
well.
I
did. Yeah.
It's just like, what is happening over there?
Yeah. Why don't we get Cybermen? This isn't fair.
Daleks and more modern, like Weeping Angels and everything else.
Well, those didn't happen when I was 10.
Yeah. But, freaky. So coming back to Overgrowth, so we have some really, really interesting characters in here, and obviously we touched on the main protagonist, but the kind of the band of characters, especially Graham, is such really just that kind of very pure, very like just the belief they have in each other is outstanding. How important was that part to this book?
Oh, very. Graham is Stacia's boyfriend. They've been together since college. They are both assuming that barring an alien invasion, they will get married one day. Like that is absolutely the long-term plan. He's a herpetologist, which is one of the two things I went to university for. And he is away in Florida counting alligators when everything starts getting bad, so she has to call him home. But he is very steadfast. Even once it becomes clear that Stacia was not lying to him, he has a moment of, wait, you mean you really were an alien invader? You're going to destroy my planet? Can I stay with you? Like this, it's not really a betrayal. You did tell me, but it feels like maybe I'm a bad person if I don't get upset. Like, I don't know what to do with this. So he has that moment, but even after he does it, he managed to get past it and come home. And that was very important to me, that they be able to have this relationship and have it be so solid and so carefully loving and realistic as much as I could, but
there's just something about obviously they see each other on kind of a different level.
A little bit, yeah.
It's such a beautiful relationship.
Thank you.
To read
I love them.
Thank you so much for writing it. Did you find that there were any kind of particular characters that changed a lot from when you kind of first conceived of them, or when you were just like, people like Mandy, for example, like some of the kind of housemate characters, were they always that way, or did they kind of change and go places for you?
They were always pretty much that way. You've got Mandy, she's a cosplayer.
Yes.
She is very dedicated to keeping Stacia, who's a little bit misanthropic, from crawling into her own head and hating everyone forever. You've got Jason, who is our token straight white man.
Yes.
And he's got a terrible girlfriend who I do kind of despise, and I liked him less once I met her. But they all stayed pretty much where I thought they'd be. It was when we started picking up the other scouts that there was some variability. We've got an American senator who comes along, and we've also got a forestry worker from Canada. And she changed a lot, less in response to book needs and more in response to public and political pressure needs.
Okay.
There are some characters who deserve to exist, but maybe now is not the time for that.
Okay.
It's things like, I, in real life, in the real world, have an aunt who travels with one of the carnivals my family runs and reads fortunes intentionally incorrectly to scam people out of money. she is a real person to whose wagon I can go.
Yes.
And I could call her on my phone when I get back to the office if I wanted to. But if I wrote a story about her, this is not a great time for relationships with the Roma in North America. And it would come off as me being stereotypical and prejudiced, even though it is completely a real person. The time for that story is not now.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I suppose there's always going to be the big wide world and the politics and whatever's going on, and I suppose you kind of have to. You could put all of that into a book, but does it become too weighty?
And exactly, and also do people start to think it's unrealistic?
Yeah.
You already have the issue of people assume that the default character is straight, white, cisgender, male, physically abled, and vaguely but not too severely Christian. That is the default in the majority of fiction. People act as if characters are allowed to digress on one of those points. You can be female, but you still have to be straight, white, cis, all of that. You cannot be two or more of those things. I know people who are not any of those things. Talking about characters that get kind of omitted, if you read my books, I write a lot of Jewish characters because I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I think that everyone deserves to see themselves in fiction. But all of our plant people, they are explicitly sanguivores. They live on blood. And they are here to eat everyone. Right now we're seeing a big upswing in blood libel again. We're seeing people talking about how Jewish people eat babies. I didn't want to include a blood-drinking Jewish character in a book that was going to come out in that political environment. It's not censorship, it's not being harmful.
Yes. Because it's so tricky as well, because obviously having something in print,
it's there forever.
It's there forever. Yeah. So whatever kind of stands now, you kind of want it to stand in 10, 20, 30 years.
If I had another 10 years and enough money, I would happily go back and rewrite everything I have done from the beginning to take out the majority of slurs that I didn't know were slurs when I first started. We didn't really start having conversations about ableist slurs until around 2014. I started publishing in 2009. Overgrowth is my 100th published novel, so you can see I have to go pretty fast.
Yes.
There's a body of work. That said, I wouldn't take out every slur. Sean Mason in the Newsflesh trilogy talks a lot about how he is going crazy, and he explicitly uses that word, and that is the word he would use.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that he's talking to a reader. He thinks he's talking to himself, and for the character, that is the right word. And I do think you have to retain the ability as an author to let a character use a bad word that they would really use.
Yes, yeah. So just thinking about kind of even the rewriting process, because I know, I don't know if you're familiar with Samantha Shannon recently decided a couple of years ago, so Bone Season came out, it's her first book when she was 19, and she decided that, now she's in her 30s, that she was going to revisit that series and rewrite it. And so they brought out Bone Season again with the kind of author's edition, as it were. And then she's obviously had to kind of retcon some of the other books then to kind of obviously all make sense. And it just sounds such an incredible kind of thing to go back to. Imagine going back to like your first ever published work and where. Where would you start?
It would be such a privilege.
Yes.
And I'm happy for Samantha Shannon.
Yeah.
I'm happy for her because you don't normally get that. Only a few authors have really gotten to do that.
I don't think she quite realised, nor the publisher perhaps quite realised how much work that was going to be.
It's a lot of work because you do kind of rewrite a book in the editing process. I had one book where an editor wanted me to do something that was wrong. Now, normally it is a conversation. It's the two of us discussing what should be done. But in this case, what the editor wanted was wrong, and it would break the book. And I told them they could have what they wanted, but only if they were okay with me killing the main character. Because seriously, the main character would not have survived if I had done what I was asked. And I was ready to do it. You know, the editor responded with, yeah, go ahead with that. And I rewrote 3/4 of the book to the point where this main character is going to die and there's no pulling it back. And then my agent managed to convince the editor that they were wrong and they let me revert. But if I wrote a version of that book where that character died, I would have to rewrite the rest of the series. So rewriting has to be somewhat superficial.
Yes.
It has to be basically Spirit of the Staircase. You're replaying an interview in your mind and being like, oh, did I really have to say that 6 times? Maybe I can fix it. That'd be good.
But just the whole idea, just you mentioned there about kind of killing a character off, because it still feels, I don't know, it's still, I know it's obviously it has happened in a lot of TV series, a lot of books now, a lot of games as well, but it's still something shocking when you get that kind of character and you're like, oh, okay, they're gone.
Yep. I have not killed as many people as I would like to.
Okay.
But honestly, I get really attached. They're my imaginary friends before they're your characters you can read about in a book.
Yes.
And one of the most happy, sad moments I ever get is finishing a book, because you have to put it down. Now it not only goes to see other people who may not like your imaginary friends, but all you can do from now on is revisit.
Yes.
We mentioned A. Deborah Baker. I wrote a group of middle grade books under that name as a tie-in to my Alchemical Journeys series. Which was the greatest trick I have ever played, because those are books that exist as a children's series in Alchemical Journeys. And after Middle Game came out, my editor went, have you ever considered writing over the woodward wall? And I responded with, would you like a copy? And so I have effectively gotten a major publisher to print LARP prompts for me. It's the best thing ever. But the 4th book in that series, which I knew was the last one we were going to do, there were 13 in universe, we were only doing 4. The last book of that series actually starts with the author, with A. Deborah Baker, talking about how there is a difference between reading and rereading. And you and I can go on this journey as many times as you want, but we're only going to do it for the first time once. So stop and think about that and how heavy that is. And it was a lot of fun to do. Honestly, I did it in part because I was writing those books and breaks between other books. So for once in my life, I had time to actually react to reviews. Normally, you do not have that time. The publishing schedule is so out of sync with reviewers. But when I was writing the 4th, I was getting reviews for the 2nd. And a couple people were like, I don't like this omniscient narrator. I would like the author to stop doing that. I'm like, well, at the time these books were supposedly written, which was syncretic with Oz, they were supposed to be coming out at the same time as the Oz books, the omniscient narrator was a very standard function of children's literature. It was a deliberate stylistic choice to fit the kind of book that I was transcribing. And so if you don't like it, I'm going to do more of it. I just intensified the thing.
Yes.
And it was great. I had a lovely time. To that one reviewer in specific.
Thanks. So your 100th book, as you mentioned before, like, what do you think are the kind of biggest lessons you've learned along the way from kind of book 1 to book 100? And did you think you were going to kind of get here? Because it's amazing. If all authors did that, I'd be a happy book buyer.
I did not think I was going to get to 100 because that would be a level of arrogance that I am not capable of. I wish I were capable of that level of arrogance, but I'm not. I think the biggest lessons I've learned are I have to trust myself. There are a couple things I did in early books that I regret because I was pressured by an editor or someone else involved in the production process that I thought were wrong at the time. But I didn't have the authority, I guess, to push back. And now, if you try to convince me to do something I know is wrong, rather than just something I don't want to do, I will actually dig my heels in and push back on you. I have learned to be a lot less precious. I think that is important. My prose has gotten better, but I am less protective of it. So that's always fun. And I have kind of learned the difference between a good idea that's not going to be sustainable for more than about 20 pages, and a good idea that if you start doing that, you're going to be stuck for 800.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's important.
Yes, yeah. No, I can imagine that, and we've probably all at least read some of these books where you're stuck in the 800 page plus, and it's just like,
Yeah, I try not to go there if I
Yes.
don't really want to.
Yes. Yeah. And so on to like, because obviously you're a horror nerd as well. So
I am.
This is going to be some fun questions coming up. So, what are your kind of big influences in kind of books, films, and you game as well?
I do
as well. So yes, that's what I love to hear, because not all authors have time to game. So yeah, what are your biggest influences, or what are you also looking forward to kind of coming out?
I think honestly my biggest influence with the way I write horror is Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel arrogant again saying that because, you know, he's Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the way I structure things, it's the same sort of, here's a person,
Yes.
here's another person, here are a couple more people. Do you care about the people?
Yeah.
If you don't care about the people, you can go now.
Yeah.
But if you do care about the people, the terrible thing that is about to make its appearance will matter.
Yes.
And that is a very King way of approaching things. If I don't care about the people, I can't write the book.
Yes.
And that's important. Harry Adam Knight,
Right.
who was a British and Australian writing team, writing under a pseudonym. But he was, I'm never sure what pronoun to use, because Harry Knight was presented as a single individual to the reading public.
Okay.
And then we found out that he was a they. So I don't know the pronoun there, but I believe both of them were cis men, so he. Harry Knight was kind of the master of the goopy horror. He wrote The Fungus, where killer mushrooms ate London.
Okay, yes.
He did Slimer. You know, he did
Yeah.
just fantastic stuff. Really lovely. Ray Bradbury and Charles Addams for melancholic horror. You kind of want that gothic in there a little bit. But I don't actually care as much for true gothics as you think. There are only so many open moors and wispy nightgowns a girl can take. But I really love horror comedies, and I really love horror musicals. I like being able to kind of juxtapose the terror with the lightheartedness, because it makes both hit harder.
Yes.
There's a group called Team Star Kid that does musicals in the U.S. They've done 2 shows in London in the last couple of years. They did It's Star Kid, isn't it, in 2024, and then earlier this year they did I Can't Believe It's Been a Year, It's Star Kid, isn't it, too. And it's lovely. But they are getting more and more well known for a series called Hatchet Field, which is a group of interconnected horror musicals. One of them, Black Friday, is basically about a killer plush toy. Tickle Me Wiggly. It is the physical manifestation of Wagog Wagog Yarath,
Yes.
who is the god of capitalism and screwing you over. And I love him. I have a Wiggly. I managed to buy one from Star Kid during the 30-second period we could get one. He is my beloved, and I treasure him so much, and that's good. You can't get another one. They are all secondary market now, and they're like £800 on eBay. It's disgusting.
Okay.
But Black Friday, the whole thing is set in a shopping mall on Black Friday, and it's about parents trying to get these dolls and devolving into a capitalistic consumer cult and killing each other trying to get these dolls, while the President of the United States is attempting to negotiate with Wiggly, who is actually an elder god that lives in a place called the Black and White. He's trying to negotiate with Wiggly to not destroy the world. And this is not working out well for him. So he shoves a nuclear bomb into the Black and White to blow up Wiggly, which is great. But we have a psychic little girl named Hannah who's been wandering around the whole show. It does make sense, I swear. But she's been wandering around the whole show, and she has visions that she gets from Wiggly's sister, Webby. And one of the things that she keeps saying that makes no sense is 2 doors, not 1. 2 doors, not 1. Well, the bomb doesn't go off. And then the president gets a notice that Moscow has just been nuked, because there were 2 doors into the Black and White. So Wiggly just shifted the bomb along and kicks off World War III. The show ends with a song called What If Tomorrow Comes, where all of the characters are singing about, what if tomorrow comes, what if midnight happens and it's tomorrow and we're okay. And then at the end, they count down, and it literally goes 9, 7, 5, 3, 2, what if tomorrow? And you hear the bomb hit, and that's the end of the show. And that is not as effective if you don't have the ridiculously of people fighting over a Cthulhu Care Bear for 2 hours ahead of time. Yeah, so horror comedies and horror musicals are a huge inspiration for me. One of the nicest things anyone has said about Overgrowth was a reviewer said that Overgrowth read like a Star Kid Hatchetfield musical.
Okay. I need to go check this out.
Yeah.
And what particular games as well? Like what has?
I don't video game.
Yeah.
I love watching people play
Yes.
video games. I watch my friend Natalie play Dead by Daylight for hours.
Okay, yes.
It's like hide and go seek, but a guy will stab you a lot.
Yeah.
It's great. And I enjoy watching Resident Evil games.
Yes.
But I enjoy watching Resident Evil movies even more.
Yes. Oh, yes. No, we need to get into this. So annoyingly, I had my cap on this morning. I left it in the office, but I've got a Jill Valentine cap. That's a replica of the Stars cap,
nice.
and it's like my favourite thing. I'm a huge Resident Evil nerd and have been since that first copy I had in the late 90s where the zombie jumped scare and you just ran away from the room. So there is something about that universe that's so campy as well that really fits into the humour.
Well, and if you watch the Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich,
Yes.
they seem like they're just there to be high camp and kind of popcorn. But the more you analyze them, they fit together perfectly. Every single one of them opens and ends with Alice waking up.
Yes. Yeah.
At least in the movies that Paul Anderson directed, which I think is all but the third,
Yeah.
the color coding is so precise.
Yes.
If it belongs to Umbrella, it is either red, white, or a very particular shade of blue. You are pale enough that if I had just watched those movies, I would not be sitting this close to you, given your color scheme today. And it's just the fact that they looked at all these little details. If you watch the second and pay attention to the news crawl at the front, you realize the whole movie is pointless. Umbrella was always going to bomb the city because the pollen count is high.
Yes.
The T virus bonds to pollen.
Yes.
As soon as they say that, you know there is no containing the outbreak. And that kind of precision will always win me over. What I want from my horror more than anything is internal consistency.
Yes.
The remake of The Blob where the little boy gets eaten in the sewer.
Yes.
I don't want to see children die, but if you put children in your horror movie, I want to see children die. They can't be immune. That sort of thing. And the Resident Evil films just did such a good job of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think when I first watched them, because I played the games and I was a bit like a die-hard fan. I was just like, oh, what have they done? Like it's too far away from the games. But I suppose if you take it as not forget about the games, but don't get too in the weeds about it.
You have to take it as its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even the very kind of campy TV series that they did with all the Weskers, which was just hilarious to have
I've just forgotten his name.
yes,
The gentleman who played Alfred Wesker.
Yes.
He passed away right after that.
Yeah, exquisite.
I had been so sad when the show got canceled and then he died, and I was suddenly very glad because I didn't want to see them recast Wesker. I loved him in Fringe. He was one of my favorite character actors.
Oh my god.
I'm just really bad at names. Laura and I have met 8 times, and I have had to be introduced almost every time. It's not malicious. It's just my head is full of the names of all the Generation 1 My Little Ponies.
There you go. Plus, as well, it is hot today.
Oh, it is so hot.
It is. We don't
do
UK,
heat.
The UK does not do heat.
I'm from Seattle.
Of course, you get it. We're not built for this.
Yeah, we really are not.
There's trains literally I don't know if you've obviously seen the news about the train that just we're just going to give up and you can all get off the train and walk to the next station. It's just
Wow, what line was that?
Well, it was I think the end of last week when it was super super hot, and it was just the train just sat between 2 stations for an hour and a half, and they're just everyone get off, and you're just
I have a friend with me on this trip. She is not here right now, obviously, but she is traveling with me. And we're sitting on the tube, and normally I am very happy if you are with me, if you're my friend, to lean on you, to be like, oh, our arms are touching. Yay, this is companionship, parallel play. Do not touch me. I will immolate you in all the fires of hell. You are sticky.
Everything is
Everything is sticky. I hate it so much. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah,
But
we do
not do heat.
Not to
But
eavesdrop, but the first full day I was here was the hottest day so far, and I think I invented the parasocial sauna because I went to
Oh,
a
God.
podcast taping and the AC in the venue was excellent.
oh God, the parasocial sauna.
So
my
I'm
God.
great. This is
Don't let
an
me
experience that I never wanted to have.
Yeah, but you had it now.
Yeah, and I feel bad for everyone
Once
involved.
in a lifetime. Wow. Yeah. We need to. I don't know. We just need to get better at this. We need aircon in more places.
You need more
house.
aircon and better air ventilation.
There's aircon.
But also, we need to maybe stop pretending that climate change is not happening and thus taking steps to alleviate it.
Yes. Yeah.
It is fascinating to me that at least in America, denying climate change has become a very strong conservative position,
Yes.
when most farmers are conservative. And if you talk to anyone who monitors growing seasons, they will tell you the growing seasons have changed dramatically in just the last 20 years. When I was a child in California, it was not unusual for puddles to ice over in the winter. I left California because it stopped raining. It never gets cold and nothing gets icy. So
And for our last question
Okay.
today, so what are you working on next? Is there any like little hints or tips about?
well, as Mira, I have been looking for my blog book for my whole life, and it does tie into climate change even.
yeah.
So I finally found my blog book. It's called The Ooze. It'll
Okay.
be, I believe, 2 years. Mira has a much slower publishing cycle than Shanan because she doesn't really exist, so she doesn't have to be fast. Whereas Shanan has to stay busy. But for the rest of this year, I've only got the next October Day novel, Silver and Lead, which will be out in September.
Okay.
And then I get to sleep.
Yay! Sleep
So-
well. Someone also wants to.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. Well, we are obviously very much looking forward to everything you have coming up.
Thank you.
And for anyone watching at home, there will be signed copies available on our website and all 10 branches of Forbidden Planet. So
They have
go-
so many books.
I know, just so many books.
If y'all are American and watching this, they actually have print copies of the Newsflesh trilogy.
Yes.
I have not seen those available for sale in like 5 years. You should make them ship things to North America because I would really like it if you could have these books and stop asking me to sell you my author's copies.
We do ship as well. We do ship internationally. just get that.
Being enabled from all sides now.
There you
I'm
go.
helpful.
We are helping the books find their homes. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Sean. And we will check you out soon on another episode of FPTV. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.